Just like in Vegas, to win in NASCAR, you need both skill and luck.
With a big stomp, boom!
Joey Logano had a little of both last week in Charlotte.
Alex Bowman failed a post-race inspection.
Now he's in the round of 8. And if you're a betting man, you have to like his chances this week in the Sin City.
You go out there and you attack.
Granted, it's not time to put it all on 22.
We've been steadily getting better.
But it is time for us. Another Around the Track starts now.
Well, what happens in Vegas won't necessarily stay there because NASCAR is on the move toward finding out who its championship 4 will be. Welcome into this week's edition of Around the Track. I'm Carla Gebhardt, and America's crew chief Larry McReynolds is going to be along shortly, and we have a jam-packed show for you as we get you ready for both the Xfinity and Cup Series races out in Las Vegas. And to do that, we're going to bring in a Cup Series contender to Garage Confidential, a man who's no stranger to the championship race. That is Christopher Bell. But for right now, let's hit the pavement because we are going racing this weekend. And when you're a NASCAR team, you really gamble all the time, but in Vegas it just gets intensified. Racing in the desert, the winds are going to pick up at the track, and it's going to affect how these drivers attack the track. Add on the fact that this weekend kicks off the Elite 8 round for the Xfinity and Cup, and yeah, it's the perfect recipe for Lady Luck to intervene. This mile-and-a-half track is one of the fastest tracks on the circuit. Not a lot of braking here. Expect it to be slick as well. Slipping and sliding is expected big time this weekend.
We've won the last 2 races there. We've won, I think, 3 times there since I've joined Hendrick and been up front for a lot of them. So, yeah, I would love to go there and win and, kind of know that you're racing for a championship. The 2 times I've gotten to be in the Final Four, we've won the opening race.
When it comes to mile-and-a-half racetracks, it's probably one of the smoothest ones we got to. There's some bumps in 1 and 2, but it's to me, it's probably one of the fastest that we go to. In the Cup cars especially, I mean, you're about wide open during qualifying. You're not touching much brake during the race.
I haven't gone to the racetrack any weekend and thought, my car wasn't capable of winning. We just haven't done it, and none of our Toyotas have done it. So, it's up to us and the teams to be better and finish it off for Toyota.
So let's go ahead and do Vegas by the numbers now. This weekend in the South Point 400, we're going 267 laps on this mile-and-a-half track. There's progressive banking in the turns going from 12 to 20 degrees with 9 degrees of banking on both the front and the back stretch. And of the remaining 8 playoff drivers, 4 have wins here. Kyle Larson and Joey Logano each have 3, while Denny Hamlin and William Byron have 1 apiece. The all-time wins leader, though, is none other than the 7-time himself, Jimmy Johnson. And there's only one person that we truly trust with giving us the keys to get this job done in the playoffs. That's America's crew chief, Larry McReynolds. And Larry, Vegas is known for a lot of things, but speed is probably the top one.
Well, it is. It is a very fast mile-and-a-half racetrack. And Carly, you talked about the progressive banking going from 12 degrees at the bottom all the way to 20 degrees across the top. You've got that long sweeping front straightaway. And these drivers, not necessarily looking for grip, but just looking for speed. They will be right against that wall, and that lets them carry that speed, that momentum all the way down those straightaways off turn 2 and turn 4. But the one thing that keeps becoming a challenge there, this surface is 17 years old, is the bumps in the bottom of turns 1 and 2. You'll see drivers trying to maneuver around those bumps because with this Gen 7 car, it very easily can bottom out in those bumps.
Yeah, a lot of different quirks for drivers to take into account this weekend. Let's talk about Hendrick Motorsports right now, though. Sure, they've got 3 of the 4 cars in the round of 8, but then, of course, the Alex Bowman disqualification kind of shook up the playoff field. His DQ because of the weight issue here from the Roval, but that allowed Joey Logano in, and so how much of a shakeup and how big of a shock was that?
Well, it really was. We just don't hear of teams getting busted for minimum weight that often in post-race, and I've really tried to dig into it this week, Carla. And the car basically, before practicing qualifying in a race, has to weigh 3,425 pounds. But NASCAR knows all the things that goes on with these race cars over the course of a race weekend, so they give you a 0.5% margin after the race, basically 17 pounds. And I get a feeling just talking to a lot of people, that Blake Harris, the crew chief, he was just right on that line before the race and practicing qualifying. And when you look at things like oil consumption, brake pad wear, the rub blocks, everything that goes on, they just were too close. They cut it too close, and it put them below that minimum in post-race, and pretty much it's black and white, a DQ.
Real quick, I know it's not the driver's fault, Bowman's fault in this, but does this impact his future at all?
I don't think it does. You know, I look back at things I did as a crew chief. Promise the last person I towed was the driver.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, speaking of those Cup playoff standings, here's where we sit with just 4 races left this season. I can't believe it's only 4, but Kyle Larson is on fire right now. We'll talk about him momentarily. Christopher Bell, though, you're going to hear from him shortly. A whole 20 points behind him, your regular season champion. That's Tyler Reddick, clawed his way back into this race at Charlotte and advanced. William Byron, as of now, has the final transfer spot to the championship 4. Blaney, Hamlin, Elliott, and Logano all on the outside looking in, but all within striking distance. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to take away from that. It's really anybody's race.
I think this is the strongest round of 8 we maybe have ever had. When you look at those drivers there, every one of them except Chase Elliott has multiple wins this year. 22 combined wins among those 8 drivers, but I also look at the bottom 7 from Bell to Logano. They're only separated by 20 points, but this is more of a conventional round. No road courses, no super speedways. It's going to be about qualifying up front, getting every stage point you can, and finish as high as you can. Of course, win a race, that's your golden ticket to Phoenix, but we do know, Carla, a minimum of 1 driver will advance to Phoenix based on points.
That is very true, and if you're talking about a dominant performance, that will be what Kyle Larson has done this season. 6 wins, 13 top 5 finishes this season, 4 top 5 finishes in the playoffs alone, scoring bonus points in 5 playoff races. Young Money, that's his nickname, but he's on fire right now.
They just don't have a lot of weaknesses. Cliff Daniels, the crew chief, he's executing on pit road with the way he adjusts that race car, his strategy. The pit crew is spot on, and Kyle Larson just gets the job done. I don't see any of these racetracks. They could sweep this round
Yeah.
if truth be known. But I will say I still want to keep a close watch on his teammate, William Byron. They are starting to catch on fire here. Top 3 finishes the last 3 races. And Christopher Bell, 4 top 10s and 3 top 5s in that 20 car. I've said all along, Bell could be the sleeper in this whole deal.
Is there a manufacturer that might have an edge in this one?
I still like the Chevrolet camp.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to. The Fords have come to life here in the second half. Toyota, though, they only have 1 win in the last 14 races, and that was Tyler Reddick at Michigan. You got to go back to Bell's win at Loudon back in midsummer. So they are having a tough time finding victory lane right now.
It's going to be fun to keep up with that. Well, we've got plenty more with Larry Mack on deck, but we got to ring the bell on the way out.
It's hard to feel safe no matter where you are in the standings. So, but yeah, certainly this is the best position I've ever been in my career.
Seabell is second in points headed into Vegas. Is this the year that he could win it all? You can hear from the JGR driver and Garage Confidential next. And can you imagine the look on Joey Logano's face when he found out that he was back from the dead in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs? According to the 22, it was something to see, but you're going to hear from him next. And Larry, what is the craziest thing that you've ever raced?
A bobtail tractor.
Tractor
trailer without the trailer.
Wow, that is pretty crazy. You won't see that on the streets of Las Vegas, of course, but there is something else besides NASCAR that's taken over. We got more around the track next. For a solid hour and a half Sunday, Joey Logano thought his quest for a 3rd Bill France Cup was over, but thanks to a DQ by Alex Bowman's 48 team, he is back from the dead and hot on the trail in the NASCAR Elite 8. All 3 of NASCAR's touring series does head to Vegas this week in a track where Joey has won multiple times before. It's hard not to count this Team Penske driver out, and while the 22 is still in shock that he's still alive in the race, he knows there's a real opportunity with his second life.
Same way we would have if we made it any other way. You go out there and you attack. The positives, I feel that, you know, we've been steadily getting better and improving throughout the season to where we are now. I feel confident in the speed we have in our car. You know, the stats may not look like it. We may look like we're underdogs from the outside looking in, but I'd say internally we feel very confident in our race team that we can make a run at this thing and get ourselves into the championship 4.
And here's your stat of the day. Every time Logano has made the championship four, it's been in an even year. But Christopher Bell doesn't really have to worry about if it's an even year or not. He's made the championship four each of the last 2 seasons, but he has yet to win a championship. So is this the year that it changes for the JGR driver? He's certainly set up to make some noise, and we talked about it in this week's Garage Confidential. We are headed into the round of 8 at Las Vegas. You are currently second in points. That has to feel like a pretty good spot to start this next round.
It does. It does. I'm excited about the challenge ahead of us, and getting into the round of 8, everybody is so capable that it's hard to feel safe no matter where you are in the standings. So, but yeah, certainly this is the best position I've ever been in my career. So I'm looking forward to it.
Do you feel like you quietly got in this position, or do you feel like the past couple of races have been good showings for you and your team?
I think that we had a really good regular season as far as collecting the playoff points, and that has been a huge game changer once we got into the postseason. So being in the playoffs and having those bonus points to start the rounds, it really allows us to just focus on being consistent and making sure no matter what happens that we see the end of the races. And we've been able to get really good finishes out of it, but I think the best is still yet to come for us.
Kind of looking ahead to the next 3 tracks and then looking behind to what you just finished. I mean, the past couple of rounds really have felt like crazy, kind of like a wild card. Did you feel the pressure of having to get through those tracks?
Absolutely. Whenever the schedule came out and we saw, how diverse the schedule was going to be with Talladega in the round of 16, and then even Watkins Glen and Bristol, we felt like we're going to be pretty normal racetracks. And then we had the severe tire change at Watkins Glen, and Bristol ended up being completely different than we expected in the spring. So, that first round was pretty unnerving because we didn't know how Bristol was going to race. We didn't know how the tire was going to react at Watkins Glen. And then obviously a super speedway at Atlanta was scary. But yeah, it's been pretty smooth sailing for our group.
And so now we have at least 3 more traditional tracks to go before you get to the championship in Phoenix. Let's talk about Vegas, though. What makes this track maybe challenging for some drivers? Yeah,
Vegas is a place where you're not going to be able to fake it. The cream will definitely rise to the top. Whenever you go to the road courses, it's pretty easy to score points even if you don't have a top performing car, because you're able to play a different strategy than the competitive cars, where that's not really going to be an option whenever we get to Las Vegas, Homestead, or Martinsville. So I think the cream is really going to rise to the top in these events.
With where you're sitting at in points, have you talked about strategy? Is it just try to win one of the next 3 races? What's it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward from a strategies perspective. In the round of 16, the round of 12, it's different with those style racetracks. But now in the round of 8, it should be pretty straightforward. And you're going to have to compete for the wins in every stage and in every race if you want to advance to the Final Four. And frankly, that's the way it should be. So I'm excited about seeing what teams are able to rise to the occasion.
You mentioned that you've not been in this position before going into the round of 8. I mean, does that affect your confidence? Like, how are you feeling currently?
It's interesting because the last couple of years I have been fortunate enough to make that championship event at Phoenix, but both times I went into the round of 8 either right at the cut line or underneath the cut line, and knowing that we basically were going to have to win one of those 3 races. And now with us being in a better points position, I think we're sitting plus 13 right now. The ball is kind of in our hands, and it's just a matter of being smooth and consistent. And while we certainly need to be competing for wins, if we aren't able to win a race, I think we should have enough points, at least starting from right now, to make it in.
We appreciate Christopher Bell for the time. We also have an update on the ongoing antitrust lawsuit between NASCAR, 2311, and Front Row Motorsports. NASCAR has responded to the injunction by the 2 teams, saying it's ready to race next season with 32 charter teams in the Cup Series. So that would make all of 2311 and FRM's entries open cars, meaning they're going to have to qualify and possibly miss the show. Last week, the teams filed an injunction to race next season under the current agreement, which is being contested. The teams are suing NASCAR over revenue sharing and how the league is run. Well, the Xfinity Series had some drama on its hands this past weekend, too, and that caused a shakeup with its final 8. We'll show you who's where, plus who's moving up next. And speaking of Xfinity, one driver in the Cup Series just became a car owner, and it's not Denny or Busch or any of the vets. It's not even Young Money, but it is a youngster. We got more on the Round of the Track next. Worlds are colliding again. The reigning Xfinity Series champion is stepping into the ring. Cole Custer has confirmed that he's going to be on WWE NXT this Tuesday on the CW network. You'll remember a few weeks back, Custer drove a special NXT themed car at Kansas. An updated scheme of that car is going to return also in Miami next week. Cole's still very much alive, though, in the Xfinity Series playoffs. With the round of 8 starting this week, Custer is second, 11 points above the championship 4 cut line. So where does everyone else line up? Well, the only person in front of Custer for now is Justin Allgaier. Austin Hill is 3rd and Chandler Smith is in 4th. And then we've got some big names below the cut line. The Roval winner Sam Mayer continues to win his way into big moments. RCR's Jesse Love, he's in 6th. AJ Allmendinger found a way to survive despite not winning at Charlotte. He's in 7th with Sammy Smith in last. And Larry, there's only one Ford, one Toyota in the mix here. How difficult is it going to be for Custer and Smith to possibly get into this championship race?
Well, without a super speedway, I'm not sure it matters if you've got a teammate or not. In fact, sometimes I think it's an advantage if you've got a teammate that's not in the playoffs because they can feed you more information from qualifying, throughout practice, and throughout the race. But this is pretty wide open as well because when you look from 2nd to 8th, separated by only 22 points. So just like Cup, every stage point, every finishing position, but think about it just like Cup as well. If you can win this Las Vegas race, it gives you 2 weeks up on the competition to get that race car ready for Phoenix.
And a little less pressure probably as well.
Just go have fun.
Yeah. Let's talk Xfinity Series for a minute because a lot going on right now on the CW network, the home of the Xfinity Series. And we've got 2 things. One, of course, we all saw coming. Taylor Gray getting the call up from the Truck Series next season, joining Joe Gibbs Racing. He's still in the truck playoffs, by the way, but here's what kind of surprised us. It's the owner of the car, Larry, and it's not Joe Gibbs, but it is the Cup Series driver, his grandson, Ty Gibbs, the grandson, like we mentioned, of the car owner. Ty confirmed the news on Instagram earlier this week. The 22-year-old will be one of the youngest to ever own a car in one of NASCAR's top 2 series. It's a trend that we're seeing more and more lately. Jordan Anderson started up his own team in his late 20s. BJ McLeod and Tommy Joe Martin started their teams in their early 30s. Is this shocking at all, Larry?
Not really. Joe Gibbs is just keeping it in the family. You know, Ty's mom, Heather, has become an executive at Joe Gibbs Racing. And at the end of the day, I think we all know that J.D. Gibbs and Coy Gibbs, Joe's sons, they were the heir to be owners there at Joe Gibbs Racing. Unfortunately, both of them passed away. But a little bit of a tidbit about this whole deal, Taylor Gray and Ty Gibbs are really close friends. And I think originally this was going to be the 19 car. Ty went, no, ma'am.
Yeah.
We're going to put you in that 54 car that I won that 2023 championship. And I think a brilliant move is pairing him with Tyler Allen, who is crew chief for that 20 Xfinity Series car. They have won 7 races this year with multiple drivers.
Big expectations there, and big expectations for F1, who's actually going to be in Vegas a month from now. What do you think of F1?
I cannot wait for that race because if you go back to last year, Carla, that's the best F1 race we had. I'm sure just like when we went to the Chicago Street Course, they've learned some things to do better, more of, less of, but definitely one of the better races of 2023.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well. Well, Kyle Larson burned down the Roval, but is he NASCAR's inevitable? We've got the Vegas odds for Sunday, plus our victory lane locks next on Around the Track. Next week on Around the Track is going to get you ready for some Miami heat. Miami Homestead is next en route to the Championship 4, and one of the Elite 8 drivers is going to be joining us in Garage Confidential. But that's not all. Frankie Muniz is going to be here as well to reveal his NASCAR future. Be sure to check your local Nexstar station listings for what you can see every week on Around the Track. So who will Lady Luck have on their side at Las Vegas Motor Speedway? Well, we're not really surprised by the guy at the top of the list for the Cup race. Kyle Larson leads the way with 3-1 odds. Then there's a pretty far drop to number 2. William Byron has 15-2 odds. Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Tyler Reddick round out the top 5. And Larry, you already know the drill. You've done this show enough. It's time to give our victory lane locks. And I got to know, who are you taking?
Well, it looks like to me the odds maker, they're saying Hendrick Motorsports versus the Toyota camp. This is not low-hanging fruit. This is fruit that's been picked and laid on the ground. The man that's won the last 2 races there, he's won 2 of our 6 playoff races. Young money right there. He and Cliff Daniels, they're going to win this race, and all they'll have to worry about is preparing that Phoenix car.
Wow, getting his 7th win of the season. All right. I'm going with Christopher Bell. Finished second in Vegas last week, currently second in points like we mentioned earlier. He's won his way into the championship for the last 2 seasons with wins, if you remember, at Homestead and then Miami. I think he gets it done in Vegas. He felt really confident in his interview earlier this week. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they're bringing speed every single week. I talked to his crew chief, Adam Stevens, this week, and they feel like they are poised to make a run at this thing. And when you look at the first 32 races, 4 tire pit stops, Christopher Bell's pit crew has the best average of all pit crews, and we know races are being won and lost on pit road.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for us on Around the Track. We hope you enjoy the race in Vegas.